Well, hello and welcome to our Sunday recap from February 26th, 2023. Today we are looking at a sermon topic called authentic. And we will be reading a devotional, or we'll be reading kind of in a devotional style out of Psalm 55. And that will be the bulk of where we sit for our day as we consider what it means to be authentic before the Lord our God. And as we speak about this word authentic means to identify reality as it is. And so we want to learn how to be authentic in the things that are happening around us, right? Someone asks you, hey, how you doing? And you just say fine, even if it was the best day of your life or the worst day of your life, you just say I'm fine. And we have these things that we say without them being truly authentic in how or why we say them. And so in today's topic, as we discuss being authentic before God, we want to learn to take time, assess, and accurately express realities that are happening. But here's the thing about being authentic before God, and this is key, friend. This is key today to remember, to learn, and to apply to our lives. Authenticity before God acknowledges present realities while looking forward to the solutions that God has for those realities. I want to read out of Psalm 55, and I want you to listen to the way in which David writes and speaks. Now, this is a prayer between David and God that he pens out for us to read. And if you've never done it, I would highly encourage this. Grab a Bible, go into a room by yourself, or with friends, whatever that looks like, and read the Psalms with emotion. Take a little pass through on them and then apply emotion to the wordings that the psalmist uses, and you will begin to understand the authenticity in which David or whoever wrote the psalm that you're reading expresses and comes before the Lord with. And you'll see this pattern that David that will reveal through Psalm 55 echoed in many of the Psalms. Listen to what David says. We are going to be reading Psalm 55, verses 1 through 8, and we will end on verse 22 and 23. So there's obviously a chunk in the middle that we're not going to go through today. That's okay. You can read it yourself, but for today's topic, we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 8 and verse 23 or 22 and 23 at the end of the Psalm. So here we go. Psalm 55, verses 1 through 8. It says, listen to my prayer, O God, and do not ignore my plea. Hear me and answer me. My thoughts trouble me, I am distraught at the voice of my enemy, at the stares of the wicked, for they bring down suffering upon me, and they revile me in their anger. My heart is in anguish within me, and terror of death assails me. Fear and trembling have fallen upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. I say, oh, that I would have the wings of a dove and I would fly away to be at rest. I would flee far away and stay in the desert. I would hurry to my place of shelter, far from the tempest and the storm. Man, David comes in hot. He comes in swinging. God, would you listen and answer me? You can almost hear this exhaustion. He's just he's so tired. There's so much is going on. He's overwhelmed. If we read this in a couple of the other, the ESV or the KJV and whatever, the other slightly variants on the translations, you actually see that David says, I am in the midst of anxiety. There is depression all around me. And see, authenticity before God acknowledges the present reality that we are in. He says, I am distraught. I am afraid. I am in terror. I am suffering. I'm in anguish. I'm in horror. I'm full of anxiety. I'm full of depression. God, I am confused about what is going on right now. Why are these things happening? I'm so overwhelmed. If you've ever experienced this, I want you to know, friends, you're not alone. Nor are you a mistake to be overwhelmed, to be in terror, to be in anguish. These are realities that exist in our life. And as we will see right now, David acknowledges these realities. He's authentic before God. He even goes so far as to say, I just want to run away. I don't understand this part, but when I want to run away, I want to run away to great things. I'm a click away from booking a plane ticket down to Roatan to go sit on a beach for 4 weeks. Like, that's my idea of running away. David is in such anxiety, such anguish, such horror that this idea of even just fleeing into the desert and surviving in the desert heat and the desert cold and the lack of water and all the things, he would see that as a place of shelter and refuge from the calamity that's happening in his life. Interestingly enough, if you read this middle section of Psalm 55, we find out that the bulk of this calamity is coming from a trusted friend of David who stabbed him in the back. Life has twists and turns that we don't anticipate or expect. And when we take the emotional realities that exist in those moments and we press them down and we hold them tight and we don't express them before the Lord, we actually become unauthentic before God. And all of a sudden, there's this distance. Authenticity speaks of deep relationship. I'm a married man. We'll be celebrating 12 years of marriage next month. And because of that, there has been a growing amount of authentic relationship between my wife and myself. There are conversations I will have with my wife that no one else gets to be privileged to because of the deep, authentic relationship that we have. I can bear my very frustrations, my fears, my hurts, my hesitations, my successes with her, knowing that when I share those things, she's going to walk alongside me in them and not leave me in it. She's not going to ridicule me. She's not going to kick me while I'm down. She's just going to hold my hand and we're going to walk through these things together. And as we develop a deeper relationship with the Lord, friends, that is what God does. Listen to Psalm 55, verse 22 and 23. David says, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall, but you, O God, will bring down the wicked and put them into the pit of corruption. Bloodthirsty and deceitful men will not live out half their days. But as for me, I will trust in the Lord." Friend, it is important to acknowledge and recognize the realities we live in and authentically express them towards God. But it is equally important to then allow God to move us through these things. If all we do is we stay in that reality and like a victimhood mentality, like, woe is me, this is always the case, this is always my life, I'm always this, I'm always that, I'm always this, these things are always going to happen, we don't allow space for God to work and move through our lives. Church, I want to encourage you today that the living God, Jesus, cares deeply about your soul, cares deeply about who you are and what you're going through. And he desires to lead us through. He's come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, Jesus tells us. If you're weary, if you're burdened, if you're overwhelmed, if you're full of horror and fear, why don't you acknowledge those things before God and then cast your cares upon him? A common practice of mine is two common practices. Number one, I will get in the car and I will drive and I will scream at the top of my lungs. And this is how it will go. I'll usually be like, God, I don't really want to pray right now. I'm really angry. I'm really upset. I'm really scared. So I'm just going to talk. And God, as I speak, would you help my heart and my mind and my soul to remember your goodness even in these moments of difficulty? And I'll go for a drive, 10 minutes, half an hour, an hour. Once I went for like a 2-hour drive where there was a lot going on and I just needed to get it out. And as I was getting these things out, as I was shouting at the steering wheel and screaming and singing songs so loudly, it was just this overwhelming peace that continued to roll over me as I just cast these things, as I voiced them and placed them at the feet of Jesus and said, Jesus, I surrender all of my emotions, my plans, my ideas, my concepts, my fears about these things. And God, would you just help me to focus on you? And it was just wave after wave of peace. Friend, if you're going through a lot right now, I encourage you to surrender to Jesus, to lay these things down at his feet, to cast your cares upon the Lord. It doesn't need to be magical. It's super simple. It's, God, this is what's going on. Let me be real and authentic with you, and let me look, God, to you to get me through these things, because he gives us the strength. In Philippians 4, chapter 4, verses 11 through 13, the writer Paul, who's writing to the church in Philippi, he says, I've been wealthy and I've been poor. I've been beaten and I've been well taken care of. I've been in jail and I've been a free man. If we look through scriptures, there was many times where Paul was dragged outside of a city and rocks were thrown on him until he was completely covered, left for dead, and his friends would come and care for him and tend to him, and he would continue to preach the gospel. And this is what he says in Philippians 4:13. It's a well-known verse. And he says, I can do all things through Christ who has given me strength. Why? Because Paul was able to be authentic in the things that went on and look to Jesus for guidance on how to move through them. I want the same thing for you, friend, that you would be authentic before the Lord. And maybe that also means you need to grow in your authenticity before other people. And we want to be careful. We don't want to bare our hearts to anybody and everybody, but have some close-knit friends that you can share both your successes and your failures with, and that they will mourn with you on the things that you need mourning with, and they will celebrate the things that you need celebration with. It's awful when you bare your heart before someone and you are authentic, and they either become jealous or they become judgmental on those things, where you're like, hey, this is a hard thing in my life, and you tell them and they're like, wow, you're such an idiot, this and this and this and this, and you're like, man, I'm never sharing again. Or you share a success and they're like, oh man, I'm so jealous. You have all the good things that happen in your life. And you're like, man, I don't want to share anything with you anymore. We want to be good at receiving the authenticity of others as well as giving it to people. But most importantly, friends, we want to develop an opportunity and a process of being authentic before God, not to leave us in that reality, but to draw us into his reality he has for us. Learning to cast our cares at the foot of Jesus. God, I am in terror. I am afraid. I am depressed. I am full of anxiety in these moments. I don't know what to do. God, would you take these things and would you work in and through them? And if that's something that you're going through right now, I just want to bless you, friend, with the confidence and the boldness to surrender, to lay things down at the feet of Jesus, to not pick them up, to not carry them on your shoulders. You weren't meant to carry all these things. Lay them down and experience the freedom of Jesus. I have one more little thing that I do personally, that I've applied to my own life, that I have found that when I do this, God moves so powerfully. And it's literally, I close my eyes at night and I think of a filing box and documents, and I write out things that are going on in my mind. My eyes are closed. I write out on a piece of paper, such and such things are happening on this day and they need to be dealt with. And I begin to slot them into filing boxes. And then I put those filing boxes in my mind's eye. I walk to a filing cabinet or a shelf and I slide them onto the shelves. And then this is as I'm going to bed, because I'm really bad at sleeping. I think about all the things I need to do, all the things I could have done, all the things I should have done, all the things I didn't do, all the things that I think people are thinking about the things I could have done or should have done or didn't do or could have done, and or did poorly, and I just get into these rabbit holes of ridiculousness in my own head. And so I began this practice, writing things out, slotting them away in a filing shelf, and then as I'm going to sleep, just saying, Jesus, would you take a look through these files? And would you only allow me to pick up what I need to tomorrow? And I will tell you, friends, it has calmed my ability in thinking at night, and it has enabled me to have better rest and sleep as I just lay and cast these things at the feet of Jesus and say, God, I want you to move through these things. And God, I want to worship you in the midst of them. And when I wake up, would you just help me to have your perspective on these topics? These are some big things, some challenging things, some things that are really just molehills, but I'm turning into mountains. And I just need the Lord to speak and move through them. And that's been something that has caused me to be able to have better sleep at night and to be able to retain better authenticity before the Lord and before others as well, learning to just love and care for people. And so, friend, last encouragement here before I sign off. I want to encourage you today and bless you with the knowledge that God cares for your soul. He cares about your situations. He cares about the things that you are going through. And He is capable of giving you the strength to get through each one of them. I bless you with the ability and the boldness to be authentic before the Lord and humble enough to surrender to His strength to move you through these things. I'm excited for the progression of these things in your life. And I am excited to see you next week as well. God bless and thanks for joining us.